Right now, as you watch this video, an extraordinary event is unfolding, arguably the largest economic conflict in human history. And no, that's not an exaggeration. It affects everything, from the smartphone in your hand to the clothes you wear and the food on your table. All of this has become part of a brutal global trade confrontation, a kind of trade warfare. Surprisingly, the effects of this battle are already impacting your wallet, even if you're unaware of it. Every news story features the word tariffs, and American leaders seem ready to impose new duties on any country, whether an old ally or a long-standing partner. No nation is truly safe from the financial blows issued by Washington. While economic sanctions and tariffs might seem routine, beneath the surface we are witnessing a fundamental restructuring of the entire global financial system. Imagine a world where decades of globalization, built on open trade and interconnected markets, suddenly begin to fracture. Borders are rising where there once were none. Countries that previously traded freely now erect barriers and lock gates, much like neighbors who used to visit each other but suddenly start building fences and padlocking their gates. This turbulent situation raises straightforward yet profound questions. What exactly is a trade war? And more critically, how does it threaten your personal finances? Let's explore this together. A trade war can be visualized as two powerful fortresses exchanging fire with economic projectiles. Countries impose tariffs and import restrictions to protect their industries or weaken their rivals' economies. But it's more than just numbers. It's about real people losing jobs, factories closing, and families tightening their belts. The purpose? Political ambitions and economic dominance, often driven by national pride or strategic interests. Why do nations take these steps? Economic theory suggests that free trade benefits everyone. Customs barriers can shield local industries, making it easier for new or smaller firms to compete against global giants with decades of experience and vast financial resources. This protection can help emerging sectors survive and grow. However, there's another side that policymakers often overlook. Tariffs are not just abstract figures, they translate directly into higher prices for consumers. Imagine your favorite smartphone costing 30% more because of added import duties. At the same time, thousands of workers might lose their jobs and businesses could shut down. High tariffs on foreign electronics could mean you pay hundreds or thousands of rubles more for a new device, an indirect cost that hits your budget hard. Moreover, trade conflicts rarely stay confined to economic disputes. They are often driven by broader geopolitical motives, demonstrations of power and influence. Economics becomes merely a tool in a larger political game, where nations seek to showcase strength and assert dominance on the global stage. In essence, we are witnessing a dramatic shift where economic battles are intertwined with political agendas, threatening to reshape international relations and everyday life. Understanding the dynamics of international trade reveals a fundamental principle. One country's protective measures almost inevitably provoke retaliation. When a nation responds to tariffs with similar or harsher sanctions, it triggers a classic escalation of trade tensions, much like children in a sandbox resorting to pushing and shoving, each side retaliating more forcefully. Can such a trade war lead to a complete rebalancing of global economic power? Or is it merely a temporary disturbance? Most often, ordinary consumers end up bearing the brunt of these conflicts. But to grasp how we arrived at this point, it's worth reflecting on the pivotal moment in 2018, when shifts in strategic priorities became unmistakably clear. The United States, under the leadership of the Republican President Donald Trump, officially identified China as its chief geopolitical adversary. The core challenge the American administration faced was a colossal trade deficit with China. The U.S. imported far more goods from China than it exported there. These numbers are not just abstract figures. They reflect a deep structural imbalance. Chinese manufacturers operated under more lenient environmental standards and paid workers significantly less, around $4 an hour, compared to American workers earning almost $30. Over the 2 decades preceding this shift, more than 3.5 million American jobs migrated to China. To visualize this, imagine the entire population of a major city disappearing, along with all its factories, offices, and infrastructure, leaving thousands of Americans unemployed and stranded without prospects. President Trump, expressing frustration and a sense of betrayal, famously declared that the trade deficit with China represented the largest imbalance in human history and accused Beijing of being the root of America's economic woes. In response, the United States launched an aggressive trade offensive, slapping tariffs on a wide range of Chinese goods, from advanced technology to clothing and toys. China swiftly retaliated with its own restrictions, notably hitting American farmers hard by shutting off markets for soy, pork, and other agricultural products. Each new cycle of mutual sanctions intensified tensions between these economic giants. Financial markets reacted anxiously, prompting companies to rethink and reorganize their supply chains, relocating manufacturing operations to third-party countries such as Thailand, Vietnam, and India to sidestep additional tariffs. At this point, a fascinating question emerges. Who truly emerged victorious in the initial phase of this economic confrontation? According to objective data, there appears to be no clear winner amid the ongoing turmoil. Despite efforts, China's trade deficit with the United States showed only minimal growth and remained largely unresolved. Interestingly, while U.S. imports from China declined slightly, exports to Southeast Asia and Russia increased, partially offsetting the reduction. Chinese manufacturers proved to be far more adaptable than Washington anticipated. In fact, many companies employed creative workarounds, producing goods in China, then shipping them to Malaysia or Vietnam for slight enhancements before exporting to the U.S. under labels like Made in Vietnam. Such schemes multiplied, creating complex supply chains. However, around a quarter of China's population faced unemployment or significant wage cuts due to the trade conflicts. Millions of ordinary people saw their livelihoods affected by political decisions driven by geopolitical tensions. Meanwhile, American exports to China, particularly agricultural products, plummeted, prompting Washington to allocate billions of dollars in subsidies to support farmers. A paradoxical effort to compensate for damages caused by its own policies. Essentially, U.S. taxpayers ended up funding the trade war twice, once through higher prices on imported goods, and again via taxpayer-funded subsidies. When a new administration took office in 2021, many expected an easing of tensions. Instead, under President Biden, the conflict intensified. Rather than de-escalating, Washington expanded the scope of tariffs on Chinese goods, marking a second, more technologically sophisticated phase of the trade war. Meanwhile, China emerged from the pandemic in a transformed state. Factory closures and port delays exposed the fragility of global supply chains, and revealed how heavily Western economies depend on Chinese manufacturing. Crucially, China had shifted from simply producing low-cost goods labeled "Made in China" to mastering the production of advanced, high-tech products with complex manufacturing processes, rivaling European standards. Attempts by Washington to curb this progress through unprecedented export restrictions on semiconductors and manufacturing technologies only prompted China to double down. Recognizing the strategic importance of energy transitions, Chinese strategists identified this sector as a critical investment priority. They accurately assessed that electrification and renewable energy development would underpin future economic growth, an insight proving to be remarkably prescient. Despite substantial government support, Chinese companies have saturated global markets with their products, often undercutting competitors by slashing prices and flooding industries worldwide. This aggressive strategy transformed China into the world's dominant producer of electric vehicles, solar panels, and batteries. In the early years of the 21st century, the Biden administration in the United States responded with retaliatory measures, notably imposing significant tariffs on various Chinese goods. The most impactful sanctions targeted electric vehicle batteries and solar energy components, aiming to curb China's technological and industrial dominance. The European Union soon joined these efforts, adopting similar restrictions. However, these moves marked only the beginning of a broader confrontation. Tensions escalated dramatically once Donald Trump's Republican administration took office at the beginning of 2025, elevating trade disputes to unprecedented levels. Tariffs no longer solely targeted China but extended across the globe, fundamentally transforming their purpose. Today, tariffs serve not only as tools to protect domestic industries, but also as potent instruments of political influence. They pressure foreign nations to accept trade agreements more favorable to the United States. For example, in February of 2025, Washington announced a 25% duty on all Mexican imports, warning that Mexico must strengthen border controls or face economic repercussions. The response was swift, with Mexico deploying thousands of National Guard personnel to secure the southern border. Similar scenarios unfolded with Canada, where the U.S. announced tariffs on key Canadian imports, aiming to renegotiate energy and agricultural cooperation in favor of American interests. At the same time, during 2024, the Trump administration threatened to impose a 30% tariff on European car imports. This move was aimed at pressuring the European Union to lower tariffs on American agricultural products and significantly increase liquefied natural gas exports to the U.S. Another strategy employed by the Trump era involved intertwining trade policy with security concerns. In January 2025, the White House threatened a 20% tariff on Japanese and South Korean automotive and electronic imports if these nations did not boost their financial contributions to U.S. military bases abroad. This demonstrates how economic pressure is wielded as a form of diplomatic leverage in today's interconnected world. Such aggressive tactics prompt a crucial question. What are the long-term consequences of this intense trade warfare for the global economy and for ordinary people? Economic sanctions and tariffs have clear limits. In the long term, U.S. trade partners are likely to strive for greater independence from American markets, reducing strategic reliance and seeking diversification to safeguard their own economic stability. This may be the most dramatic twist in recent history. Imagine nations that spent decades developing their economies around exporting goods to the United States. Now, these countries are actively seeking alternative markets to sell their products. It's comparable to a situation where your primary client, responsible for 70% of your income, suddenly behaves unpredictably. Naturally, such a situation prompts efforts to diversify business strategies. Already today, the European Union and China are noticeably aligning their positions. Europe is working to diversify its natural gas sources, increasing imports from Algeria, Qatar, and Norway. In the face of escalating trade tensions, the EU may soon intensify the use of the euro for international settlements, aiming to reduce reliance on the American dollar. What is especially surprising? While official statements emphasize protecting national interests, behind the scenes there unfolds a dramatic shift in the global order. Countries that once competed fiercely are discovering shared interest when confronting American economic pressure. Leading economic experts warn that a course toward tariff escalation will inevitably have severe consequences for the entire global economy. Manufacturing costs in the automotive sector could rise significantly, potentially adding as much as $3,000 to the price of a car. Imagine saving for a new vehicle only to see its cost spike by $300,000 due to trade conflicts. Is that fair? Is this what ordinary consumers truly want? According to independent analysts, increasing imports from China, Mexico, and Canada will add roughly $2,000 annually to the financial burden of American families. Despite the White House's loud claims of strengthening the American economy, the rigid tariff policies of the Republican administration are fueling inflation and slowing economic growth. What is most striking is that despite clear negative impacts on everyday people, support for trade wars remains high among the population. How is this possible? The answer lies in skilled manipulation of patriotic sentiments and excellent public relations, framing such policies as defending national interests. And how will this trade conflict impact Russia and ordinary Russians? The consequences are complex and layered. Weakening Western economies could reduce global demand for energy resources, such as oil and gas, which might pressure the ruble's exchange rate and decrease federal revenues. For ordinary Russian consumers, there are tangible risks. If Chinese manufacturers face serious difficulties in Western markets, they may have to cut back production, leading to higher prices for electronics and household appliances within Russia. Conversely, there is another potential scenario. Chinese producers losing access to Western markets may seek new outlets for their goods, and naturally, Russia could become a significant target. In this way, the shifting global landscape creates both threats and opportunities, unfolding with unpredictable implications for Russia and the wider world. A surge of affordable, high-quality Chinese goods flooding into the Russian market could delight consumers by offering more options at lower prices. At the same time, the situation presents notable opportunities. A prolonged trade conflict might serve as a catalyst for Russia's import substitution efforts, encouraging local manufacturers to step in and fill the gaps left by reduced imports. This shift could lead to job creation and bolster economic growth over time. Having examined this scenario in detail, it's worth considering how individual investors might benefit given the current economic landscape. It's important to note that this analysis is not investment advice but an informed perspective on potential opportunities. Manufacturers of industrial equipment could see a significant boost, especially as the United States actively seeks to relocate production within its borders. Companies like Caterpillar, Deere, N Company, and Rockville Automation may stand to gain substantially from government incentives aimed at strengthening domestic industry. Many are aware that China dominates a vast share of the global market for rare metals, crucial for modern electronics. To reduce this strategic dependence, the U.S. has been actively supporting the development of its own resource extraction. Firms like MP Materials, one of the few American companies involved in mining these critical elements, are positioned to benefit. In the energy transition sphere, companies such as First Solar, Phaser Energy, and SunPower Corporation are expected to experience robust growth. This is driven by both government support, often with minimal political interference, and the urgent need to bolster local manufacturing capacity. For Russian investors amid the ongoing global trade tensions, domestic metallurgical firms could find new profitable markets domestically and internationally. As the U.S. imposes tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum, attention should also be paid to the agribusiness sector, which has gained from expanding exports to China. The global economy is on the brink of profound transformation. The current trade war between major powers reflects a broader struggle for worldwide leadership in the 21st century, with technological rivalry, particularly in artificial intelligence and quantum computing, intensifying rapidly. Those nations that manage to secure dominance in these key fields will enjoy a significant strategic advantage for the next decade. For ordinary consumers, the effects of this ongoing conflict are already apparent and will likely deepen. Imagine a scenario where your favorite smartphone's price nearly doubles, making it significantly more expensive and less accessible. Such examples highlight how geopolitical and economic tensions directly impact everyday life. The fragmentation of the global economy can lead to a significant slowdown in technological progress. When nations pull back from open collaboration and limit the exchange of innovative ideas, advancements tend to stagnate. Since technological development has been the primary driver behind improving living standards worldwide over the past few decades, any decrease in innovation poses risks for future growth. Amid ongoing trade conflicts and increasing economic uncertainty, it becomes essential for individuals and businesses to adjust to new realities. Practical strategies such as diversifying savings wisely, continuously investing in skills and education, and exercising caution with long-term financial commitments can serve as vital safeguards. These three straightforward yet powerful principles help navigate the challenges of shifting global conditions. Living through a period marked by trade tensions demands greater adaptability and a keen awareness of global economic trends. Events on the other side of the planet now directly influence local prices and household budgets. Despite the risks, this new economic landscape also offers extraordinary opportunities. Companies that learn to adapt quickly will hold a significant competitive edge, while nations capable of constructing resilient economic models can secure prosperity for their citizens for the coming decade. Perhaps in this age of turbulent global change, new rules for the world economy are being written. Our understanding of these processes and our ability to respond effectively will determine not only our personal financial well-being, but also the future stability and prosperity of our children and grandchildren. But are we truly prepared for these long-term implications? What are your thoughts on this situation? Have you already begun to feel the effects of trade wars in your daily life? Share your insights and personal experiences in the comments.